Hey everyone, Jeff here from Films at Home, and in today's video I want to review and clear up what's going on with this new Rocky 4K collection. Hey everyone, so thanks for coming back to the channel. Today I have been working on this Rocky 4K knockout collection for a couple of days now since I got it in the mail, comparing back and forth between this release and the Blu-ray, and I'm now finally ready to talk about it. I know it's been widely talked about on the internet. There have been, some reported issues. I'm going to cover all of that in this review and also just cover the video, the audio, packaging, special features, all the stuff you usually get from me in a 4K review, and I will be doing that for all four of the movies here. I'm covering the entire box set, Rocky 1 through 4, in this single review video. So before we get started, we have to talk about what's actually included in this box set, and what's included is Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, and Rocky 4, plus the Rocky 4 director's cut, which is a new cut that Stallone put together. So you have the first four movies in the franchise, but you don't have Rocky 5 and you don't have Rocky Balboa, which is the sixth movie, and then of course none of the Creed movies are included here. So this is a little bit of an abridged collection compared to previous Blu-ray collections that had all six of the movies. Now this is sort of like what Paramount did with Star Trek. They put out the first four, then they ended up releasing 5 and 6. Not to say that that was a bad decision, because 5 and 6 still had individual releases which you could just add on to your box set, and those may have taken more time. I suspect here again that Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa, maybe there's something going on there. I know Stallone's talked about doing sort of director's cuts of those as well, so maybe they're still working on them. At the very least, they gave us the first four Rocky movies, and they are releasing all of these individually, so my hope would be in the future, if they do a 6-movie box set on 4K, they also make Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa available individually, so you can just pick those up without having to repurchase the whole box set. Would I have loved all 6 movies in this set? Of course, that would have been ideal, but I love these movies and I'll definitely take the first 4 plus the new director's cut. I'm happy about that. Now to kick things off, let's talk about the video quality for each of these releases, starting with Rocky, the original from 1976. Now, if you have the old Rocky Blu-ray from 2006, this is a massive upgrade because that one was really kind of crappy. If you have the newly remastered ones that came out in like 2014, this is going to be a nice step forward, but maybe not as transformational. Rocky itself is kind of a rough looking movie. It's never looked beautiful. It is going to be extremely grainy, and it's going to be kind of dirty looking, and that's the source. So what Warner Brothers has been able to do is bring this to 4K from those 2014 transfers, bring it up to full 4K resolution, add Dolby Vision HDR on top of it, and give us a really nice looking presentation. Like, this is definitely the best that Rocky has ever looked, and unless they did a completely new remaster, which isn't out of the question, that could happen, but unless they go back and completely redo it with some new technology, I'm still not even sure that would help much, because the source is clearly in sort of a not perfect shape, and just the way the movie was shot and the way that it was, the cinematography, like, it's just not a super clean looking movie. So to compare it to something else from the time period, say Jaws 1975, Rocky 1976, Jaws is going to look a lot better, but in the context of Rocky itself in that movie, this 4K looks really good. Now moving on to Rocky 2, that might actually be my favorite of the 4 theatrical cuts on 4K. I thought this one looked pretty clean. Again, going to be a fairly grainy picture. You got to remember, these were shot on film and these are not pristine. I thought the HDR in Rocky 2 really packs a punch. How's that for a pun? And it just looks fantastic. Like, again, comparing it to movies from a similar time period, yes, I don't think it necessarily stands up to them, but that's source. That's the way it was shot. That's the gritty, kind of dirty look that the Rocky movies, at least the first couple, always had. And that's on full display here. But getting to 4K, getting full 4K resolution definitely helps. Like, it's less grainy than the Blu-ray, because that grain, it's resolving a little bit better with more pixels to work with, more 4K, more resolution, right? That all helps. And the HDR does give it a nice little upgrade. So I'd say Rocky 2 is probably my favorite, and that's well worth the upgrade here as well. Now, Rocky 3 is one that I had a little bit of an issue with, but it's always been sort of an issue. It was an issue on Blu-ray. The issue continues here on 4K. it's surprising because this is, third in the series. You'd think that it would look a little bit cleaner. It would be a little bit tighter with the grain, like better camera technology. But for some reason, I don't know if it's the compression that's going on here. It is like really like overly grain. Like the compression, the artifacts in this are a little bit much at times, especially if you get into. There's a scene at the beginning that really strikes me where Rocky's riding on the like a golf cart with his son, and they're going through like all these white pillars, right? Right after, I think it was right after he fights Hulk Hogan, and it's just like extremely grainy. Like really, you can tell that the compression was not great here, and it leaves a lot to be desired. And there are several other scenes throughout the movie. Now, the Blu-ray, I did a head-to-head comparison on all of these, was just as bad. It was worse being an HD, being on Blu-ray, not having full 4K. So this is better than what we had. These are all, remastered in 4K, but from 9 years ago at this point. So I think an upgrade, while it may not have helped Rocky or Rocky 2 as much, definitely could have helped Rocky 3. And that brings us to Rocky 4, both theatrical and this new Rocky versus Drago, the ultimate director's cut. Now, Rocky 4 I thought looked pretty good. This is a fairly good-looking transfer. It's obviously much newer than the first couple of movies. Technology was better. This is sort of what I expected from Rocky 3. But it's a cleaner image. The grain resolves a lot better. It's a lot tighter. It's a lot sharper. Like, I liked the way that it looked. And again, the HDR does give you just a little bit of an extra boost. Now, the director's cut is actually one that I thought looked the best of all 5 transfers that I looked at. And that's most likely because it does have a new remaster. Like this would have been done recently, whereas the other transfers were done 8 or 9 years ago. And you can really tell, like that watching the director's cut really had me wishing that they had done new remasters for the other 4, because I could see, and maybe this was just Rocky 4 because it's obviously going to have a better source, and camera tech and cinematography was a lot different than the first 2 Rockies, and even Rocky 3. But it had me really wishing they had gone back because the director's cut looks really clean. Now, it also changes the aspect ratio, so they widened it a little bit. You're going to have more black bars on the top and bottom. It's a 235-1, but I just really liked the way it looked. The color grading is also just a little different than what you probably are used to. If you watch Rocky 4 and then Rocky 4 director's cut, you're going to get a different color. Clearly, Stallone went in there, and he didn't give like a completely revisionist color grade, but he definitely changed some stuff. He definitely gave it a little bit of a cooler look. It's not like super dramatic, but you've got some more blue, green, than sort of your red, orange. It's not as warm. It's a little bit cooler, and that's, his prerogative. It's his director's cut. That's the way he wants it to look. He can certainly do that. The director's cut is a very cool release of this. We've never had this before, so that's another reason to buy the 4K set. It's the only time we've ever had this director's cut on physical media, but I thought that was the best looking of all 5 video transfers, and it does go to show just how far the technology has progressed, even since they did 4K masters of these movies back in 2014. It's come a long way even since then. So with video covered there, it's solid. This is the best that all of these movies have ever looked. It is definitely a step forward. With a new remaster of those first 3, or really all 4 movies, I think this could take another leap forward, but I'm really just not sure. It would come down to how good you could really take Rocky and Rocky 2 in particular, and this is probably as good as you can get. I'm not sure a huge remastering effort would be worth it in their case. Now, the audio is where the internet went crazy when this was released, and why everybody's been pinging me for a couple of weeks to get a review out there, because people wanted to know what's going on with the audio. So starting with Rocky 1. The audio on Rocky 1 is the same DTS HD 5.1 track we had on the Blu-ray collection with the remastered Blu-rays, but they included what they're calling a DTS HD mono track. Now, the reports online are that is just a downscaled stereo track dropped to mono. So I guess it's not true original mono audio, which we've seen this happen with other releases. But honestly, if you ask me, not being a super expert on the Rocky movies, I didn't really think it was that big a deal. If you want the mono experience, it's really like it's okay. Like, it's not that bad. Now, I prefer the 5.1. I think it's a little more dynamic. Sometimes I do prefer the mono. In this case, I'd go 5.1, and the 5.1 sounds perfectly fine. It's just as good as the Blu-ray. It's the same audio track, so don't expect anything crazy there. But if you did want that original mono audio, although I really couldn't tell the difference because we don't really have a comparison point. Apparently, people who dive way deeper into this stuff than I do, have found that this is a folded down 5.1 stereo, whatever it may be. So it's not original mono. That's the rumor. That's what people are saying. Warner Brothers is out and looking at this right now, investigating it because of all this. So we'll get a response from them at some point. Now, before I get into the rest of the audio, I do want to sort of address this thing that people are doing, right? I do want to talk about quickly, like, some of the issues you're about to hear about are what I would consider extremely minor issues. These are not issues that affected my enjoyment of the discs. They are not issues that really affected my relationship with this movie while watching it. It didn't affect my enjoyment of the movie. In fact, if you hadn't told me, I would not have noticed these unless I was literally watching Blu-ray and 4K side by side, which I can't do. So I watch a Blu-ray disc, then I watch the 4K to do a review, and I kind of take notes. But who in their right mind is sitting there with the Blu-ray and the 4K playing, right side by side while they're trying to watch a movie? That's kind of an insane way to watch a disc. I don't do that, and I don't get into all the crazy, like, I don't hook up my computer and get into different programs and go, this is slightly higher here and slightly lower there. Like, at that point, we're turning discs into a calculus problem. We don't need to do that. I think that is above and beyond, and, if it doesn't affect your enjoyment of the disc, I wouldn't be that upset about it. So, that being said, the first issue reported that was a real, I would call, serious issue, but not to me, is Rocky 2 and the audio pitch. Now, it's being reported online like somewhere between 4 to 5%, the pitch of the audio, so meaning like how high or low the audio is like 4 to 5% lower on Rocky 2 4K than it was on the Blu-ray disc. Now, I went back and forth, watched a scene from 2, recorded it, watched a scene from 2 on 4K, recorded it, head to head. I mean, yeah, if I do that 100 times, I start to hear slight differences. But, it affects the music a little bit, it affects the dialogue, sure. But it's not like it's a massive effect. It's not like the dialogue goes from, this Mickey Mouse high pitch down to Thanos really low pitch. It's just not what's happening here. Like, it is not that dramatic. We're talking about single-digit percentage changes in pitch. 99.99% of you would not notice this. You would not even know about it unless somebody had been plugging in programs and trying to figure this out. Like, I just don't see how the average consumer who's going to enjoy the Rocky movies in 4K is going to care about this, because it really doesn't change your experience. I liked the way Rocky 2 sounded on the Blu-ray. I like the way it sounds on the 4K. Is it slightly different? If you really focus and you really look, yes, fine. They are, the pitch is lower on Rocky 2 on 4K. But, like, it's just not that bad. It's just not that bad, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I just personally would not have noticed it, and I would have said, hey, sounds like the Blu-ray. And also, who's to say that the Blu-ray wasn't wrong? Like, are we going back? Are we comparing to the original audio in theaters? Are we looking at Laserdisc and VHS releases and DVD releases and then the Blu-ray and the 4K? Like, maybe the Blu-ray was pitched too high and the 4K brought it back down. Or, vice versa. It could be wrong. It could be right. Like, I'll wait until Warner Brothers says anything, and they may do a disc replacement, but what if they go back into the vaults and they find out, hey, we screwed up on the Blu-ray and the 4K is actually correct? They're not going to do a disc replacement, and honestly, it's just, that is not enough reason to not buy movies you love on 4K. Now, there have also been complaints on Rocky 3's audio, which is the same as the Blu-ray, that the foreign language tracks are pitched differently. I mean, okay, again, like, I would have never noticed because I don't watch the foreign language tracks. I know some of you guys out there do because you live in different countries. If you don't do subtitles, maybe you do these dubbed tracks sometimes. But again, it's such a small difference that unless you are listening in one ear to Rocky 3 on Blu-ray and one ear to Rocky 3 on 4K, you're not going to know the difference. Honestly, even if you do that, you might not know the difference because they'll just blend together. So it's just not that egregious a mistake. I have to say, it's just not that bad. And these overblown, oh, another failed release and quality control and all this stuff. First of all, we don't know what's correct and what's right. We need to talk to Warner Brothers about that, and they need to go back and figure it out. And even if it was wrong, I kind of understand why this one passed through quality, because I didn't notice. I mean, you just wouldn't notice unless you were sitting there with a sound deck in front of you, and I guess maybe the QA engineers and people doing this stuff should, but I just can't hold this one against Warner Brothers. There have been way more egregious mistakes that have been released to 4K than what's happening here. So to compare this to any of those other mistakes, I think is blowing things way out of proportion. So now the audio real quick on Rocky 4. Again, same we had on Blu-ray, so not a big difference there. Another DTS HD 5.1. Same that you get on the director's cut. They're pretty similar audio-wise. Like obviously they have some differences, so the audio is different. But I didn't find that, they were... it didn't have any issues, and that was the good. They didn't have any pitch issues. Everything there seems to be correct. I mean, if there are issues, again, like I wouldn't have noticed Rocky 2 and 3's issues, so maybe I didn't notice any issues on Rocky 4, but we're talking about such minuscule details. But overall, I think to say that this audio is like bad is kind of crazy, because it's not bad. It's essentially the same as what we had on Blu-ray. Would it have been cool to get like Atmos or something? Sure, but again, the movies don't really call for that. Like, I'm not sure how much remastering of audio you could do, especially for like a Rocky that's an original mono track. Like, you can't really turn that into Atmos. It just wouldn't make sense. So, just long story short, I have no issue with the audio here. It didn't detract from my experience. I loved watching these on 4K and revisiting these movies. It's the best they've ever looked. It's just as good sound-wise as the Blu-rays were, which was solid enough for 99.9% of consumers out there, including myself. It was very good, very solid, and I just have no issue with the AV presentation. Now, packaging here, we get a pretty standard cardboard slipcase. On the inside, you've got the hard plastic case, and then you've got some, actually some arms here that slide out with each of the movies. So Rocky 1, 2, 3, and 4. The director's cut of 4 is also on the same 4K as Rocky 4, and then you do have the bonus features there. It also comes with a digital code, 4K digital code for all 4 movies plus the director's cut. So if you want to redeem that, you'll get those first 4 and director's cut on 4K digital for the first time. And I don't mind the artwork. I think it's a nice little set all around. It's nice and small, which I always appreciate. I don't have to fit 4 more cases on my shelf. It's really only about the width of a case and a half, so I'm happy with that. So overall, I mean, I can appreciate what people are doing out there with their reviews, and I appreciate, people that do find these issues. But I will say, I think it's overblown. And especially if you're me, if you're I like to consider myself, like, I do have some higher end equipment that I'm sure most people have, but I consider myself to be a pretty like average Joe when it comes to this stuff, and that's why I started this YouTube channel. I'm an average guy who collects movies and wants to review them and tell other average consumers if they're worth buying or not. And I know I can get into the weeds myself sometimes, but this is just one release, and you guys know I would call out stuff that stinks if it stinks, and call out errors if they're really egregious, and this just isn't one to me that deserves that treatment. Obviously I think the QC needs to be looked at. Hopefully Warner Brothers will investigate and respond, but it's just not a reason not to buy. Like, these are such minor things, and if you're sitting there with like your tuning fork and you're trying to figure out the pitch of this movie versus that movie, I mean, if seriously, it's one thing if it was like Rocky sounded like Mickey Mouse on the Blu-ray, and then on the 4K he sounded like he'd smoked 4 packs a day for 40 years, but that's just not the case. Like, it's just not that different. Honest to God, you guys won't notice the difference, and you'll just enjoy these. If nobody told you about it, you would not have known. That's what I'll say. If it wasn't reported and people didn't, start to make a stink of this and blow it up online, you guys wouldn't have known the difference. These look great. They sound great. They're solid. It's a solid release overall, and I can't say I don't recommend it. I would have loved to see them do all 6 Rocky movies together, but as long as they release 5 and 6 individually, I'm fine with that, because at least we get these first 4 in our homes as quickly as they could. And I'm always okay with just adding on individual releases later, because realistically, none of your box sets will ever be complete. You buy a complete Star Wars box set, they make more Star Wars movies. You buy a Marvel set, they make more Marvel movies. You buy Jurassic Park, they make more Jurassic Park movies. So I'm totally fine with just having these 4 right now for 4K, and I'm happy they exist, and I definitely wouldn't shy away from buying it. If that's what you've been afraid of, don't be afraid of it. In fact, now might be a great time to get a deal on eBay because somebody's trying to get rid of their copy. You're going to enjoy these on 4K. So that's it. That's my long review. That's my mini rant about, the how people have been reviewing these and how the internet, you know how the internet is, and I can get caught up in it too. We blow things out of proportion. If something's really bad, I'll call it out, but this just isn't that case, and I think that there's a lot of clickbait going around right now for like how bad these really are. And that's not to call anybody out. People are going to have different opinions, but this is my opinion. And I have talked to some other reviewers and people I respect in this world too. And, some people are really hard on them, and others share the same thoughts as me. And so really, I think if you're just looking for a good Rocky experience at home, this set's going to give it to you. So if you do want to pick this up, again, don't be shy. Don't be scared away by audio issues. Worst case, you'll get a disc replacement, and I'll update everybody on that. But I'm not even sure that's going to happen or that it's even warranted, to be honest. So you can pick this up on Amazon. The link is in my description. If you purchase from there, you help support my channel, so I appreciate that. Also, make sure you subscribe here on YouTube and like this video so others will see it. And make sure you check out all my social media platforms, my podcast, of course, the Films at Home podcast, and all the other links in the description for ways you can support me and my channel partners. So appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching this. I know it was a bit of a longer review, but I had to get this all off my chest, so thanks for sticking with me. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy out there, and I'll talk to you guys soon.